So welcome back, friends. So we are doing the external features of spinal cord in this session, and in this session we are talking about features in sulci, attachment of spinal nerve, enlargements of spinal cord, and your cauda equina. So let us talk about fissure. As I mentioned, the fissures are the deep grooves, whereas sulci are superficial grooves. So let us talk about them first, and these are seen externally on the spinal cord. So here you can see in this figure, so there is a, first on the anterior aspect there is a deep fissure known as anteromedian fissure, which is as deep as 3 mm wide, and it is deep and it extends the entire length of the cord. In fact, it goes above the foramen magnum and called as the anteromedian fissure of medulla oblongata. We'll see the same thing when we are doing the section through the brainstem. Now the content of this is your anterior spinal artery, and there are two anterolateral sulci on either side of the anteromedian fissure. So let us see in this. You can see here in the midline, that's your anteromedian fissure. Here you can see, and this is the anterolateral on one side and the anterolateral on the other side. So that's the fissure, and here you can see again in this picture, again you can see anteromedian, and either side, this one where your nerves are coming out, so this red line which I am drawing on both the side, so this is your anterolateral. So anterolateral sulcus, because it is not that deep, so this is right anterolateral and left anterolateral. So here also you got one more anterolateral. So in the anteromedian, which is in the center, we have got the spinal artery. So if you see, so in this picture, and that's the anteromedian, and if I have to show in this spinal artery, so here will be your anterior spinal artery located within the anteromedian, and this one is showing your one side anterolateral. There will be similar one more anterolateral sulcus on this side. Now we go to the posterior aspect. So posteriorly what you see is there is a posteromedian sulcus is there, and it is almost, you can say, half of your anteromedian, that is 1.5 to 2.5 mm in depth. It is a faint longitudinal ridge with two posterolateral and two posterintermediate sulci. Unlike one on each side, here you got two on each side. And these posteromedian sulcus contain a septum of neuroglial tissue called as a subarachnoid system. So same way here, it should have been a point which says that this contain your pia mater modification called as a linea splendens. So this is the modification what we have here, and here we got the modification called as a septum subarachnoid system. So let us see in this picture. Here you can see this is in the posterior aspect. There is a posteromedian sulcus in the midline. Then on either side you got posterintermediate sulcus, and then more laterally there is a posterolateral sulcus. So here in this picture you can see there is a in the midline here. So this is the point. This is what we call as a posteromedian sulcus, and here we have a posterolateral, and in between there will be posterintermediate. So it will be ideal if I draw the picture and show you. Yeah, here we have already. Okay, no need to draw. So here this one is this is the posteromedian in the midline. Then if you go more laterally where the nerves are coming out, so this one if I draw, so where the nerves are coming out, this one and this one. So this is your posterolateral. And in between them you have one more which is running. See, in between this is a posteromedian, this one I am saying. Now that is postero-intermediate. So postero-intermediate again on right and left side. if I use a different color, so this is your postero intermediate on either side. So the red one is postero intermediate and the blue one is posterolateral, and I'll put the black one now. So black one is your postero median sulcus. So all these are your sulci, not a fissure. So these are the, so posteriorly you got unpaired posteromedian, and this unpaired posteromedian you'll be having your linea splendens is present anteriorly and posteriorly. In this picture again, if you put it, so here you can see there is a subarachnoid septum in the posteromedial aspect. So that's about your posteromedian. And in this is also the figure which is showing here, you can see. So this is, if you notice this one is your posteromedian sulcus, and if you see on either side, so this one which is coming out on here and here, so where the nerves are coming out, that's your posterolateral sulcus on both sides. Okay, so how do we identify? So in this case also, if here this one, if I deeply, if you visualize this one and this transverse section, in this you can see the one which is deeply grooved in the front, this one. So this one is your anteromedian fissure, whereas on this side and this side, these are your anterolateral sulcus. This one is your posteromedian, this is postero-intermediate, and this is your posterolateral. Okay, let us try to draw the same thing. So let me draw one figure for you, and this is not straight, but anyways I'll be able to show you. Okay, this is anterior, this is posterior. So this one which is deep in the front, this is your anteromedian fissure. And what do we have here? We got the anterior spinal artery, and then there is a thickening of your pia mater, and which we call as your linea splendens. And in addition to this, the point where we got exactly our horn, sorry, this is again, I'll do it. Let's go on again. Yeah. So this one is your anteromedian fissure, and on either side, this is the part where I have to draw a depression here, this side and this side, and this depression on either side, these two, they are your anterolateral sulcus. So right and left anterolateral sulcus. Then posteriorly we are calling this a posteromedian sulcus with a subarachnoid septum in it, and where you have the fissure here, so here you got one sulcus on the posterior horn side, and these are your posterolateral sulcus, right and left again. This is also your posterolateral sulcus. In between them we also have intermediate between your posteromedian and posterolateral. These are called postero-intermediate, right and left. So these are your, posteriorly you got one unpaired and two postero-intermediate and two posterolateral, whereas in the front one unpaired, that is anteromedian fissure, and then two anterolateral sulci. So these are your fissures what we have seen in sulci. Okay. Now each half of the cord, now here also you can see, now this is important part, that is the location of your artery. I said there will be a anti-spinal artery located in the anteromedian fissure like this throughout the course. So thereby when you look at this artery, this will be always be seen. So in the front, if you are noticing, there will be an artery which is running throughout the course. So this is an anteromedian deep groove. So in this groove, a fissure, we have an anti-spinal artery which is running through and through. So thereby by looking at this, when you look at the front end and the back end of it, so back end you will not be able to find this artery. So this artery is present only in the front end. So thereby by identifying this artery in the front, so because of the formalin, the blood in this artery is get black in color. So thereby in cadaveric specimen you will find this line as a black line in the front. So this black line in the front will indicate that the specimen what you are seeing or holding or facing is your anterior side, and the back side you will not find this dark line in the center. So that's how the side determination with anterior and posterior surface, anterior posterior side determination. Now each half of your cord with the anteromedian and anteromedian fissure in the posteromedian sulcus, it is divided now because you have one in the front and the back, one you got here at the back. Now because of this, you can just pass the blade through and through in the center, and you can divide right half and left half. Possibly you can call this as a right half after passing the blade through and through, and this is a left half. So right half and left half, here you can see each one is further divided now by anterolateral. Here the anterolateral is, I'll use the blue color. This is the part where your nerves are coming out. So this is one anterolateral right and anterolateral left we have. The same way at the back also we have the posterolateral right and left sulci. So there are anterolateral and posterolateral right and left sulci are there. With this now we have the entire one half of the spinal cord is divided into, we can call this portion whatever is in the front. So this one I can label this portion now as the anterior. Let me rub this. Okay, so this is the anterior part. Between your, this one is your anteromedian and anterolateral is your anterior part. Then between anterolateral and here somewhere this line where you have this one, that is a posterolateral, you will have the lateral, and between posterolateral and your posteromedian you have your posterior. So thereby posterior, lateral and anterior. So in this figure if you want, so this one is your anterior, anteromedian, anterolateral, and this is posterolateral. So thereby we divide this into three parts. The spinal cord can be, each half of the spinal cord can be divided into three parts now. So this portion which I am now covering, now this part of the spinal cord can be called as the anterior part, and between the two anteromedian and posterolateral, this portion can be called as a your lateral part, and between the posterolateral and the posteromedian, this part can be called as a your posterior part. So these are the three divisions. Each half can be divided the same way we have on the other side also. So here you will be having again anterior left, lateral left, and then here you will have posterior left. Now apart from this, now these sulci are also helping us to identify a ventral root. You see there are fibers which are coming out here. So these fibers what you see, they are all called this one as a ventral root. So these ventral root which are coming from your anterolateral sulcus, you can see they are coming from this sulcus is what we call as an anterolateral sulcus on both right and left side. So anterolateral sulcus is a point where which gives attachment to ventral roots. The same way a dorsal root or the sensory root, they are arising from, if you see, if I am able to mark here, so that will be, so these are, or this one is your dorsal root. So dorsal root arises from your posterolateral. So here if I have to draw it, so if I use a different color, possibly yellow, so here if I say, so whatever is coming out through this is your ventral root or motor root, and whatever is going back in this is a sensory root or dorsal root. So this is, and in this picture also we can see, here we can make out again. So that's your anterior. So this one is our concern. So anterolateral 1 and anterolateral 2 on the same side. So these root which I am putting, they are your ventral roots. Same way at the back you have the posterolateral through which these are your dorsal roots. So dorsal root can also be seen in this view. So in this view, so this one is your posterolateral sulcus which is running on either side, and from this sulcus your posterior or dorsal root or dorsal root are going in. So this is your root which are attached to the sulci. So sulci are helping us to figure out the attachment of root. Now what about the attachment of spinal nerve now? So that was the attachment of your roots. So now let us look at the spinal nerve. So spinal nerves are total, there are 31 pairs are there, and which emerge from each side. So 31 on the right and 31 on the left side. So you can see in this case, so this one is your ventral root. We have identified this all are your ventral root, and this ventral rootlet, they become ventral. This all these small tiny fibers, and I'll use this big one here. So in this case, all this small fiber what you are seeing, so these can be called, all the small fibers are called rootlets. So this will be your ventral rootlets, which all combine together and now they are forming your ventral root. Same way these are your dorsal rootlet, small, and this is what is your dorsal root. So both ventral and dorsal are combining and they are forming, you can see here, they are forming your spinal nerve. So there is one spinal nerve on the right side and there is a one spinal nerve on the left side. So there are pair of spinal nerve coming out from each side. So that way we have got 31 pairs of spinal nerve emerging from each side. So in the neck region, you can see this is the neck region where we have got, so in the neck region till here, till this is the neck region, we have got 8 nerves arising from there, and the thoracic region we have 12 nerves, and lumbar region, so that's your lumbar which is shown in purple in color. So you can count 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So there are 5 are there, and that small portion that is sacral, so there are 5 are there. So remember, they are not coming from the same level due to developmental rate growth difference. The bone was growing faster and the nervous tissue was growing slower, but in the initial 3 months they both were growing at same rate. That is the reason the nerve came out from the respective foramen. Later on the nerve still be in the same foramen, but the cord displaces upward. That is the reason, if you notice in this particular figure, your cervical and all are more or less in the cervical region only, but if you see here lumbar, you see the lumbar L1 is here and L5 is here, and already they are arising. If you see L1, so they are, if you count this one, so these are all here, this one is, so your lumbar is already ending. You can see your this is sacral and coccygeal, it is ending at L1, but the nerves are coming lower down. So that is, there is a mismatch is there. And how the spinal nerve attachments are there, and your anteriorly or ventrally you got the motor root and dorsally a sensory root. The same thing here. So this one what you are seeing, this one is also called motor or ventral, and these are your dorsal or sensory. So those are the attachment, both combined together, and we have the spinal nerves, a pair of spinal nerve, 31 pairs. What are spinal segments now? So it is a part of your spinal cord where your right and left spinal nerves are attached. So you can see, if I take a blade and give a cut here, so I can say that this portion, this entire portion is one segment, and this entire portion is the second segment. So just like your vertebral column are segmented, your spinal cord is also segmented, but these segments are not visible externally. So how do we define a spinal segment? A spinal segment is defined as a part of the, or a section of the spinal cord with a pair of spinal nerves. So it should have a pair, that is on right side and left side you should have a pair of spinal nerve. So then that particular piece is what we call as a spinal segment. So these spinal segment correspond to vertebral level in thoracic, lumbar and sacral region, but not in the cervical region. So let us see. This is spinal segment does not correspond to the, so here you see the statement is wrong, this one is not correct, something went wrong there. I'll tell you why. Okay, now here you look at the spinal cord. Now this is the spinal segment. You can see here these are the two segment what we have, and here is the one segment. One segment here it is showing here posterior root or the sensory root with the posterior root ganglion and dorsal root ganglion. Here anterior motor root are there, and both are combining and giving a mix now. And these roots are formed by a rootlet. So rootlet of sensory nerve, rootlet of motor nerve. So motor and sensory rootlet combined together form your dorsal or posterior or sensory root, ventral or anterior or motor root, and both combine and form your spinal nerve trunk. So this way we have got here, there are 8 in cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral and 1 coccygeal. So that will make us 31. So you have got 31 spinal nerve and 31 pair of spinal nerve, and there are 31 spinal segments are there. Now how do we localize? So localization of the spinal segment, that means which level of vertebra, does the vertebral level correspond to the spinal segment is the question. So that is what we call localization. So localization of spinal segment is important to locate if there is any lesion, if any lesion or any injury or fractures are there, or if you want to approach or open up the particular area for any surgical approach. For that reason we have to know which area what vertebra lies and corresponding what vertebral segment correspond to what spinal segment. So in case of your cervical, if it is a C6 spine, you have to add +1 cord segment. So thereby at C6 you will find the C7. Similarly in your upper thoracic you have to, if it is T3 you have to add in upper thoracic, example is T3, so it is applicable to T1 to T6. So anywhere between T1 to T6 you have to add +2, then you will know what is the exact segment. So that means to say your T3 at your 5th thoracic vertebra you have the 3rd spinal segment. Similarly lower thoracic, here you have to add 3, so that means that your 10th thoracic vertebra you have the 7th spinal segment, and sacral the number is very high. So here if it is like you have to add almost, you can see here how much we are adding, around 5 plus, around 5 we have to add to get the level. So this is the localization of spinal segment. So if we see in detail, then the general rule says that a spinal segment, you can see here, a spinal segment as a rule always lie above the numerically corresponding vertebral spine. So this is a rule. A spinal segment as a rule always lie above the numerically corresponding vertebral spine. That means they will not be at the same level. So it is always above whatever the number we are saying. So at least here we can see now, except the upper cervical. In case of upper cervical will be, there are total 8 segments are there. So C1 to C4. So till C4 you have the levels are same. So they are at the same level. But from C6 spinal segment, one vertebra we have to add, it is one vertebra above, and in your upper thoracic, that is from T1 to T5, there are 2 vertebrae above, in lower it is 3 vertebrae above, and in lumbar it is 3 to 5 vertebrae above, and sacral and coccygeal it is 6 to 10. That is the reason a spinal cord is ending at your L1 vertebra. So this gives us a fair idea. You can see here also there is a picture given the side which also shows that at what level these are coming out. So to count this you can actually put the number in this. So and then you can see the nerve also. So thereby you will get to know. Now you can see this one is your first to second. So second cervical vertebra is there, but the C2 nerve is coming above this. So that means the C3 nerve is corresponding to it. So thereby you have always this difference will be there. Now the next part is the enlargement. So we have done about the gyri, sorry not gyri, sulci and the fissure, and what are the structure which are attached to it. Then we have seen the attachment of your spinal nerve to it. Then we have looked at the what is the definition of a spinal segment and how they are different from your vertebral segments or level. So now the enlargement. So there are 2 enlargements that are seen in the entire length of spinal cord, that is 45 centimeter. One is present in your cervical region and the other one is present in your lumbar or lumbosacral region. Now why there are enlargements are there? Why it is flattened out in between? It is because they contain bigger size neuron and more number of neurons, more number of motor neuron. And why they have more number of neuron and big size of neuron? Because this area supplies your limb. For example, your cervical is responsible for supply of your cervical will form your brachial plexus, which is responsible for, it is a nerve plexus to supply your upper limb. Similarly, your lumbar is responsible for your lumbar plexus, lumbosacral, and they are responsible for supply of your lower limb. So in order to control, supply and make them move, the number of neurons have increased in their size and they have also increased in their number. So this increased size and number, in order to accommodate that, so this much part of your two areas in your spinal cord got enlarged. So since the first area forms in your from C4 to T2, this is what we call cervical enlargement, and the other one is from your L2 to S3, that we call lumbosacral enlargement. So the widest part in this will be here at C6. So somewhere at C6 it will be the widest, that is coming around to your 38 millimeters. Same way it is widest is around 35, which correspond to your S1 vertebra. So these are your some of the measurements which have been done. And you know why the enlargement happened, because the nerve roots coming out from here take part in the your brachial and the lumbar plexus to supply your upper limb and lower limb muscles. Now these are some of the differences are there between your cervical and lumbar enlargement. So this is again simple and easy. The extent is, this is from the entire extent from C5 to T1, this extent from L2 to L3 spinal segment, and vertebral level they are, this is again, as we know that they will not be matching. So at level, if you want to find out where exactly is your enlargement of your cervical region, you can count your C7 spine, and from there you can go down to T1, and from there you go up and you can get your C1 to T1. So that will give you vertebral level of the cervical enlargement, and T9 to L1 is the vertebral level of your lumbar enlargement. We said the widest part is 38 mm, which is at C6 in cervical. It is 35 mm, which is at S1 segment. Innervation of your cervical enlargement is through the muscles of upper limb and the pectoral girdle, and this will be muscles of lower limb and the hip girdle. So these are your differences. Very simple, straight and plain. Now cauda equina is the last part of your gross feature. So what do we see? So cauda equina, I already told you what the cauda means. Cauda means tail, equina means horse. So these are the bunch of nerve roots. So these are your bunch or collection of nerve roots. So bunch of nerve roots, ventral rami, which are total, this should be 4, there is a mistake, this should be 4 lumbar, which is from L2 to L5, S1 to S5, and here coccyx 1. So thereby 4 plus 1, 5 and 10. So total there are 10 pairs on right and left. They run the vertical course. You can see here, in this case, if you want to see in this diagram, that is a conus medullaris. In the center you got your filum terminal, and you can see filum terminal is attaching to your coccygeal vertebra. Then you can notice that each these nerves a bundle, the cauda equina, which is L1, L2, L1 is not there. That is the reason I said L1 should not be included. Here also you see L1 is not included. So here you have L2, L3, L4, L5, then S1, S2, S3, S4, S5. This is again, and then we have got the coccygeal nerve. So all this put together one side, that is one part of cauda equina, and the other part. So these are your, these nerves, if you see these nerves, they take up almost a vertical course to form a bunch of nerve fiber around the filum terminal. Filum terminal remain in the center, right and left side you have 10 spinal nerves are there of the root value, L2 to L5, S1 to S5 and coccyx 1. So this bunch, since it resembles the tail of a horse, you can see here the tail of a horse which is shown. So that is the reason it called as a cauda equina. And where is the location of cauda equina? It is located in your lumbar system. I told you lumbar system where it is present. So it is located in the lumbar system, in the dural sac. Yeah. And I also mentioned about your cauda equina syndrome also, if you remember. So cauda equina syndrome also I mentioned. So this is an important question. The entire cauda. So this part, from the exam point of view, the student always get confused in these 3 areas. So one is conus medullaris. So what is conus medullaris? It is a lower tapering end of your spinal cord, is what we call conus medullaris, and where it is ending at your L1 in case of adult and L3 in case of your infant. And from the apex of conus medullaris we have the filum terminal, which is starting from there. So that's about your conus medullaris. Now cauda equina is again, these are your bunch of nerve fibers which are arising from the lower end of the spinal cord, and Since they resemble the tail of a horse, they are called chorda equina, and they are formed by L2 to coccyx 1 on either side. And any damage or any injury to them can cause the chorda equina syndrome. And I also told you the location is they are present in the lumbar system. Phylum terminal. Phylum terminal is the modification of pia mater. It extends, it's a thread-like structure, extends from the apex of conus medullaris all the way till your coccygeal vertebra on the dorsal aspect, and it has been divided into, the total length is 20 centimeter. It has been divided into two parts. The part which is lying in the dural sac is what we call phylum terminal internum. The part which lies outside is what we call phylum terminal externum. So this part is though phylum terminal is a non-nervous tissue. It's a non-nervous tissue. Sometime a part of it, or upper part may show an action potential. So whenever action potential is shown, we believe that it may be a nervous tissue. So if it is showing action potential, then it could be due to presence of vestigial or rudimentary coccygeal nerves. See, only one coccygeal nerve is there, but there are 4 vertebrae are there. So the second, second, third and fourth coccygeal nerve sometimes may remain patent, and those will get incorporated or embedded in the phylum terminal, which may fire action potential. So basically it is a non-nervous tissue. And the function of phylum terminal also I mentioned as it provides the caudal anchorage or support to the spinal cord. So here you can see again here phylum terminal which is shown, and we can also see here a conus medullaris. So these, all the 3 words are very important and should be remembered clearly. Now that's again a conus medullaris, and why it is called conus medullaris? Because it lower end is resembling like a cone. So this is the apex. So apex is ending at L1 in case of adult and L3 in case of infant. Yeah, and it continue above with the lower coccygeal section or part of spinal cord. And the tip gives attachment to your phylum terminal. Now that's all about your external feature. Now from this point onward we'll look into the internal feature of spinal cord. So spinal cord, if you cut the spinal cord like a cucumber transversely from one end to the other end, so you will notice that there is a centrally located, whatever I am now highlighting now, centrally located butterfly shape or H shape, English letter H or a butterfly shape, a centrally located gray matter, and peripherally located, whatever is around it, what you are seeing which is not colored is a white matter. So there is a centrally located H-shaped gray matter, which means a gray matter means it should have your collection of neurons, which we call in the central nervous system as a nuclei. Yeah, so there are neurons are present here in this part, and when we say surrounded periphery, so that is a central portion, this is central location, whereas a peripheral part you got white matter. So this one, all wherever I am putting this cross mark, the entire thing is your white matter. So when you say white matter, what do we mean? We mean mainly your myelinated nerve fibers. Now here also you can see, how do we know which is anterior, which is posterior? So anterior is always decided by your a deep groove what we have, this we call as an anteromedian fissure, whereas the posteriorly you have posteromedian sulcus, with the your subarachnoid septum or posteromedian septum. So this is here. You also notice that in the center, apart from your central gray matter and the peripheral white matter, the central gray matter also we can notice that there is an opening. That opening is what we call as a central canal. The central canal is present within the center of your gray matter. So let us look into the details now. Now, to study the spinal cord internal feature, we have to study both butterfly shaped centrally located gray matter and peripherally distributed white matter. So now, because of the presence of centrally located gray matter, the entire gray matter and white matter are further divided. So if you look at the white matter, so white matter is divided into your funiculus or your column. So they are also called funiculus / columns. So they are like columns. So this is what you have is the anterior funiculus, you can see here, which is in the front. Then you got your lateral funiculus, a lateral column, posterior funiculus. So these are nothing but here, if this is your anterior. So antifuniculus is located between your anteromedian fissure and your anterior horn. So between this area, whatever area what you are seeing, this entire portion of your white matter, which I have now colored, is what we call as a anterior funiculus or anterior column. Similarly, between your posteromedian septum or posteromedian sulcus and your posterior horn. So this is a posterior gray horn what you are seeing, or you can call now right now here as a posterolateral sulcus. So between posterolateral sulcus and your posteromedian, whatever the area you are seeing here, this portion, this is what we call as a posterior funiculus or posterior column. Now between your anterolateral, which is here, and your posterolateral, which is here, so between these two, whatever the area which is left now, so that is this area which is left in between, is what we call as a lateral column or lateral funiculus. So same thing on the other side also. Clear? So thereby this is the division of your white matter. Now white matter, apart from this, is also divided, that if you notice that in front of it, so in front of your central canal, there is a small amount of white matter is present here. If you can notice that there is a small amount of white matter is located here. So this what, see here, this is the anteromedian, sorry, this is your anterolateral. So this is the part which we are talking here. And same thing on this side also, you got this portion. So this is right and left anterior funiculus or anterior column what we have. But other than this, you also see that there is a small portion which is present in front. And this area what you are seeing is again a white matter, but this white matter is present in front of your central canal. So this white matter is what we call as an anterior white commissure. The reason why it is called commissure, because it is connecting here one side of the white matter with the other side. So this white matter is connected with this side by this. That is why it is called as a commissure. So this part is what we call as your white commissure. Now similar commissure is present even at the back also. So this one is again here, we said this one is your posterior. This is your posterior of one side, and this is the posterior of other side, posterior column or posterior funiculus. And again you got at the back also, you have a area which is present here. This is what we call as your posterior. This is also commissure, and through this again what is happening, one side of the white matter is communicating with the other side. So this part is what we call as here, this also is a white commissure. Commissure means whenever it is crossing. Commissure fibers. So that means the fibers from one side can cross to the other side via this. So since there are two are there, and one is in front of the central canal, other is behind central canal. So this one in the front is called as anterior white commissure. The one behind is what we call as a posterior white commissure. So these are here. So thereby you can say the white matter. Now this is what we can divide. We can divide the spinal cord internal feature, wherein we are dividing our gray matter and white matter. And white matter can be divided into your columns, also called as a funiculus. Other than that, you can also have the division in front of your central canal as a commissure. So columns of funiculus are three. They are anterior, lateral, and posterior. Anterior can also be called as a ventral, lateral can also be called as an intermediate, and posterior can also be called as a dorsal column or dorsal funicular. Same way the commissure is divided into the one in front of your central canal you call anterior wide commissure, the behind is called as a posterior wide commissure. So these are the two commissure what we have, front and back in the column. Now if you look at the gray matter, so what about the division of gray matter? So you come back here and you look at the division of the gray matter, and the gray matter also is divided now, and that is a butterfly, centrally located butterfly shape. So it is divided into horns. So if you look at this, and if you just put this one, suppose just imagine that you are putting here this entire thing, this looks like a horn of a buffalo. Don't you see that this is one horn and this is another horn? Same way these are also horn, and these are again horns. So these are like your horns of a bull or a cow. So those horns, so they are elevation or prolongation. So these are called as a horn. So this is centrally located butterfly shape gray matter is there. Now this itself is now divided. Again the division of the gray matter also, just like your white matter, is also into, now here instead of a funiculus or column you got horns and commissures. The horns are again, you have just like this, you got anterior horn and posterior horn. Anterior horn is also called ventral horn, posterior horn is also called as a dorsal horn. Now in certain areas, I'll tell you which area, you even have the lateral or intermediate horn. These horns also have a functional name. Ventral horn is also called as a motor horn because all the motor neurons are located here. Sensory horn is also called, dorsal horn is also called sensory horn because all your sensory neurons are located here. Lateral or intermediate horn is also called as a visceral horn or autonomic horn because your viscera or your autonomic ganglia or autonomic sympathetic fibers, sympathetic and parasympathetic, they start from here. So those are the ganglia. Whereas commissure is again divided into same way. You got anterior gray commissure and posterior gray commissure. Let us see this. So where do we have anterior and posterior gray commissure? Now these commissures are the one which are actually dividing. So let us see now. Where are we? Okay, we come back to this. So this is the entire thing. So in this rub, and now I'll highlight the anterior horn. So this one is our anterior horn of one side. This is the anterior horn of other side. So these are your anterior horn, also called anterior column, but horn is commonly used for gray and the columns are commonly used for white, but both are interchangeable. So those are your anterior horns. Now I can label this as a, here it is already written, but I'll label this as an anterior horn, right and left, also called as a motor horn, also called as a ventral horn. Now you also see the long and slender. Long and slender, you got one more horn on either side, and these are your posterior horns, also called dorsal horn or sensory horn. So these are right and left posterior horn. In between you also have here this extra portion, these are your lateral horn or your intermediate horn, this one. Now anterior and posterior horn, if you see, they are present throughout the spinal cord, but their size and the shape will vary depending on whether we are in cervical, thoracic, lumbar or sacral. In general, your anterior horns are bulbous or wider and posterior horns are narrow and longer. And the anterior horn, which are also called ventral horn, they are more bigger and enlarged, wider in case of your cervical and your lumbar region because of your lumbar and cervical enlargement due to formation of your brachial and lumbar plexus to supply. So that means, in other words, these are the areas where you have got here lot of motor neurons which are supplying the muscles of your upper limb and lower limb in the respective enlargement. So since they are more in number in that area, you will find this area bigger. And these at the back, these are filled with your sensory neurons, all this. So these are your sensory neurons. So that means your sensory horn or posterior horns are filled with your sensory neurons. As far as the lateral horns are concerned, so lateral horns are not found throughout the spinal cord. They are only found only in two areas. So lateral horns are found in two areas. One is they are found in your thoracolumbar outflow, that is from T1 all the way till L2 level. So T1 to L2 level of spinal segment you will find the lateral horn. So that means there are no horn or there are no lateral horn from your C1 to C8. Then again you got again there are horns which are present in your lower region, that is your S2 to S4, that is S2, S3, S4. That means from L2 till S1, from that is L3, L4, L5, S1, you don't have any lateral horn, and then after S4, S5, S and coccyx 1 you don't have a lateral horn. So that means the lateral horns are present in only these two areas. Now this T1 to L2, this is the area is what we call as a thoracolumbar outflow, which is an anatomical name of sympathetic nervous system. So this is your sympathetic nervous system. That means these lateral horns are meant for the sympathetic nervous system. And S2 to S4, this we call as a sacral part of craniosacral outflow, which is the anatomical name of your parasympathetic nervous system. So thereby you got your motor neurons in the front, sensory neurons at the back, and what neurons do we have here then? So these are your mixed neurons. They are both motor and sensory, which we have here in the intermediate area, this part. Fine. Now you also have to notice that there is something, your anterior horn of one side is connected to the anterior horn of other side. Now these connection which is happening through again a gray matter. So this part of the gray matter what you are seeing, which is lying in front of the spinal cord, this entire portion in front of the central canal, this part is what we call as your anterior gray commissure, which is lying in front of your central canal and behind your anterior white commissure. So this is the area. Similarly at the back, if you have, see, you will have the two posterior horns are connected to each other via your posterior gray commissure. So this one is your posterior gray commissure, and this is located between your central canal at the back, and in the front you got your posterior white commissure. So this is where, and why, what happened through commissure, your right posterior horn will communicate with the left posterior horn, and via anterior gray commissure your right anterior horn will communicate with the left and vice versa. So thereby you got the horns, commissure in case of gray matter, columns or funiculus, and commissure in case of white matter. Now this I already told you that between what and what these horns are present and commissures are present. This is the same picture again. You can notice again you got your anterior commissure is here, sorry, anterior funiculus, lateral funiculus, and this entire red color is your posterior funiculus. The fissure, sulci and fissure and all are shown respectively. In the central, this one is your horns again. This is your anterior horn, this one is your lateral horn, and this is your posterior horn. And those are your commissure what we have. So you can see this is your white commissure, anterior white commissure, this is your posterior white commissure. Same way here around it, you will have your anterior and posterior gray commissure. Now this is a macroscopic. Macro means with the naked eye, if you cut the spinal cord and you see with the naked eye, then this is what you will be able to see, or at least using a dissection microscope. Dissection microscope is a different microscope where you don't achieve very high magnification, but you will be able to see the gross anatomical specimen under that. So if you see here, this one is your section at cervical, this one is a section at thoracic, the number is also mentioned. This one is a section at your lumbar, this also is cervical. So this is your C3, this is C6, this one is your T6, this is your L3, and this is your S2 level. So if you notice this one here, all these are, wherever I am putting the star mark, so they are all your ventral or anterior horns. And one common thing you will notice that they are shorter and they are wider, whereas the posterior horns are longer and narrower. And the distribution of gray matter versus white matter is not uniform throughout the length of the spinal cord. So whenever the gray matter increases, the white matter decreases, and vice versa. So this is what exactly happens throughout it. So now this is, here you can see again, there is also another thing which you will notice in this is there is something called as a reticular formation, which is this one. Reticular formation is nothing but this is the network of cell bodies in the myelinated nerve fibers which extend from your upper part of your spinal cord, that is from the cervical region or cervical segment of spinal cord all the way till your cervical region of spinal cord, then foramen magnum, then you got medulla oblongata, pons, midbrain, and thalamus. So till reticular nucleus which is surrounding, if reticular nucleus is like a chocolate, if thalamus is like a chocolate, reticular nucleus is like a wrapper around it. So until that point we have this reticular formation. So thereby you will see that it is reticular formation is seen in the mainly in your cervical part of it, mainly only initial part of your thoracic also may be shown. So this one, if these are some of the characteristic features what you can compare with your gray matter and white matter, how they are changing the shape and their size and shape. So if you see just in case of your cervical region, so here they are large and oval. You can see they are large and oval, the gray matter here, and whereas your anterior horn, if you notice, that is the overall circumference of it. If your anterior horn, if you notice, they are broad and they have a massive anterior horn. You can compare this one with a long and slender posterior horn. And if you see the entire cut section of the thoracic, they are circular and small. Their anterior horn is slender anterior horn and slender posterior horn. But comparatively, the posterior horn is still more slender. And here, very importantly, you will notice there is a presence of lateral horn. I told you, your T1 to L2, you will have the lateral horn, or your autonomic horn will be present in this area. Come to lumbar again. Lumbar is large and circular. You notice that these two are large because these are the areas which will give rise to, this will form your cervical enlargement to form your brachial plexus to supply your upper limb. This will form your lumbosacral enlargement to form your lower limb plexus to supply lower limb musculature. So these are the two areas where it is large, and in the large also you will see the anterior part is larger than the posterior part. So you see the bulbous and short anterior horn. Here it is bulbous and short posterior horn. So again relatively, again anterior horns are much wider than the posterior within same. Sacral is small and circular or maybe quadrilateral, just like your thoracic. Here you got again massive and ovoid anterior horn and massive and ovoid posterior horn. Relatively again anterior horn compared to posterior horn is wider. So these are the various characteristics. This is how we can identify a section given to you with the naked eye. By looking at the section of the spinal segment, you will be able to have a rough idea from which part the spinal cord this particular segment has been taken. Now these are some more features which are already given there. It is just showing whether there are horns are there or not. Same thing what I told you, it is given in the form of a table. So you can see here these are all the levels here. So there is cervical, thoracic, lumbar and sacral on this side, and this side if you notice you got here what is the outline of a section and gray matter. Under gray matter we are seeing posterior horn, lateral horn and anterior horn, and whether reticular formation is present or not. I told you reticular formation is this meshwork like thing what we have, this one. So whether it is seen or not seen, that one, and how much is the amount of white matter is present, and whether there is a presence of postero-intermediate sulcus. Now this is also important because the postero-intermediate sulcus is not present throughout the range. Posterolateral, posteromedian, anteromedian fissure and anterolateral sulcus are present throughout, but posterior-intermediate is not present throughout. So that is the reason where it disappears, we have to know it. Now if you look at this one, here this cervical region, it is oval, this is oval to circular, this is nearly circular, this is circular to quadrilateral. You don't have to remember or by heart this. It is just for your understanding that there is quite a variation which is happening throughout the length, and this we have seen in the previous images are already there. So here you have a large slender posterior horn which is extend far posteriorly, whereas in case of thoracic it is small and slender. Again it is becoming large and bulbous in lumbar and relatively large and massive in sacral region. Lateral horn is massive in your cervical part and slender in your thoracic part, bulbous in here this and massive. Something went wrong. No. I think label has went wrong. Up and down it should have been. So what has happened? So here, what went wrong is this should come down. Your lateral horn should come down and anterior horn should go up. So that mistake has happened. So I can correct this. So what I can do is I can just put some small white patch on this and I'll write with this. Okay, so upper one is your posterior horn, no, anterior horn. So this is your anterior horn. And lower one, this one is your lateral horn. Because lateral horn is present only in the sacral and your thoracic region, not elsewhere. Okay, so if you look at your anterior horn is massive in both your cervical and your lumbar region, whereas it is again in sacral also, because it is called as a lumbosacral plexus or lumbosacral. That is the reason both it is bigger. Cervical also bigger. Here it is having both together is supplying your lower limb. This is supplying your upper limb. And this is slender in case of your thoracic region. Lateral horn is absent in case of your cervical. It is present only in L1 and L2 in case of your lumbar. It is S2, S3, S4 in case of your sacral, and here it is present from all level T1 to T12. This I told you, thoracolumbar, so T1 to L2 and sacral S2 to S4. So that is the reason it is present in this area. The reticular formation is well developed only in the cervical region. It is about to disappear in the thoracic region. That is why sometimes you will find traces of it, whereas it is absent in other two region, lumbar and sacral. Amount of white matter, if the gray matter is less, the amount of white matter is high. So here our horns are very narrow, gray horns, so that is why the white matter is tremendous. And here also they are relatively, it is something like more or less 50-50 gray matter and white matter in your thoracic region. But lumbar and sacral, you see, they are large and bulbous horns, are the gray horns, so thereby there is very less space for your white matter. So it is less, and here it is so massive that it is the white matter is the least amount of white matter is seen in the sacral region, and greatest amount of gray matter is seen in the sacral region. Now similarly, the massive amount of white matter is seen in the cervical region and less amount of gray matter is seen there. So thereby you can say, as you go from top to bottom in the spinal cord, the gray matter increases and the white matter decreases. Or the other way around, you can say the white matter decreases and the gray matter increases. So that is how the trend is from top to bottom. Now this post-to-intermediate sulcus is present throughout the cervical segment, that is C1 to C8, whereas it is present only in the upper thoracic segment, that is till maybe, or you can simply remember as your out of 12 segments, your upper 6 is present, whereas it is absent in the lower thoracic, entire lumbar and your entire sacral spinal segment. So that's all about your overview of your gray matter and white matter. So now from this point onward, we'll do in detail what is the subdivision. We have seen that there was a gray matter like this, the gray horn was there like this, lateral horn was there like this, and there was a posterior horn was there. So this is what you have seen with the central canal, and we call this as an anterior horn or the ventral horn, lateral horn or the intermediate horn, posterior horn or the dorsal horn. Now we have to see the detail whether these horns are further divided or not, and the answer is yes. There is a further division of these horns on both sides, and that brings us to the gray matter of spinal cord. So let us do the gray matter of spinal cord. Now what exactly is your gray matter is made up of? So if you see your gray matter, the gray matter is entirely made up of, so you can see the arrangement. Now this is where the organization of gray matter is seen. So gray matter is arranged and white matter is arranged. So if you see the gray matter is arranged in the form of a column. You can see here, this is a part. So if I can see the entire H which is coming out as a 3D structure, so this is one column, this is another column. So these are like your arranged like a column which is extending from your top floor to the bottom floor. So it is like a column, a section is there. Whereas if you see the white matter, so white matter is arranged in the form of a fibers. So there is a fiber arrangement is there in the white column, and whereas a gray column is here So one second. Okay, now this longitudinal arrangement of gray and white, please notice that your gray matter is made up of your gray matter. If you, this is all the column, that means if it is here, here also it will be there. If you cut off every part of it, you will see a centrally located a column of gray matter. So this gray column is made up of your neurons. So all this, that means there are neurons in the anterior horn, lateral horn and posterior horn. Whereas if you see this white matter, which is now I'm putting the star, so which is again on the either side, so this white column, now this is made up of your myelinated nerve fibers. So this is what they are made up of. So this is what is the longitudinal arrangement of your both gray and white is there. So they are also arranged here transversely. So apart from arranging your longitudinally or superior inferior arrangement, you also have the medial lateral or transverse arrangement is there. So this transverse arrangement, if you see, this arrangement is your afferent and efferent fiber, the one which are actually coming out. So these are all here, all these are your motor which is coming out. So this one you can call as a your efferent fiber, and these are all which are going in. So this is your transverse arrangement. So these are all going inside. So this is your afferent. So this is what we call as a transverse arrangement of this. Not only apart from these things, if you also notice in the apart from this fiber, we also have, so these are the one which are transversely arranged, and you also see here you will be having this also is your commissure. If you remember, that's your anterior white commissure, and this one is your anterior gray commissure. Same thing, you will have posterior gray commissure, and there's a posterior white commissure. So these commissure are also running transversely. So there is a afferent and efferent fibers which are running transversely. There are commissures which are running transversely. So decussiating means there is a crossing is happening, when it is just not that the right will go to the left and left will go to the right. So it is something like this which is happening. So when the right is going to left and left is going to right, there will be crossing of the fiber will happen. So this is what we call as a decussiation. So let me show you the decussiation. So this is what is the decussiation which is happening. So the right and left are communicating, and this is communication. So there is a decussiation is happening between your anterior and also commissure fibers. Apart from this, so there is a arrangements we are seeing. The three arrangement we notice. The first arrangement is your vertical arrangement or longitudinal arrangement, which is in the form of your columns. So there are gray columns and there are white columns. Your gray columns are your neurons, white columns are your fibers. And then there is a transverse arrangement is there, where you got your afferent, efferent and your commissures and decussiating fibers. In addition to this, there is a somatotrophic arrangement is there. Soma means body. So you also had trophy means location. So that means the body wise location is also seen in your spinal cord. You may remember that homunculus in the brain, where your entire body is represented in the brain in the upside manner. So whether such kind of arrangement or somatotrophic arrangement is also seen in the spinal cord is a question, and the answer is yes. So let us see. This one is again, you can see your longitudinal arrangement of gray and gray and white matter. The gray, you can see here all this one is entirely here white matter only. So gray matter I will show you. This is the white matter arrangement we are seeing. So here you can see each of this in the column. You can see all blue color are your sensory, or they are efferent, and they are going towards your brain. And the same thing, the red ones which you are seeing, they are the one which are efferent, or they are motor, and they are coming from brain towards the spinal cord. So these are your descending tracks on this side, and these are your ascending tracks on this side. So in this also you see the somatotrophic arrangement. So these are all the tracks. So this is showing us how the white columns are arranged. These are all your longitudinal arrangement. That means it is going from all. So that means you can see whatever the tract is present here, we will see this in detail later on. So whatever the tract is present here, this tract is showing the arrangement. The cervical is located laterally, whereas the sacral is located medially. Similarly, you can look at this another tract called as a spinothalamic tract. Here you see cervical is located close to the gray matter, and the sacral is located close to the periphery. So that is one type of arrangement. And if you look at your spinothalamic or pyramidal tract, here cervical is located close to, that is the inside, and whereas your sacral is located outside. So why do we need to know this? Because if there is any lesion, if there is any injury or lesion which is happening closer to this part, so then the cervical fibers which are supplying, they get affected most. And if it is happening somewhere at the periphery, suppose if it is happening only in this part of it, so then these are the areas which will get affected and rest of the part will get escape. So for this region, so this is what we call as a longitudinal somatotrophic arrangement. Now gray column, we said the neuronal arrangement. So you can see here, these are all your columns are there. So you can see these are all your gray columns. So you can figure out that the entire thing, here you have here, this portion is your anterior horn, lateral horn, posterior horn. This is entirely extending from your, like you can say, top floor to the basement. So each one is, so thereby some part will be present throughout and some are present only till certain level. So that we will see in detail. So these are what we call as a neuronal gray column arrangement. Transverse arrangement, we already said that these are your ventral and the dorsal, that is one, ventral going out, dorsal coming back. In addition to this, we have got the commissures are there. So these are the commissures are here. So this one is your anterior commissure, this is your posterior white commissure. Yeah, in addition to this, inside also you will be having, this is your posterior gray commissure, this is your anterior gray commissure. So this is the somatotrophic arrangement, what we see in the brain. So this is the motor homunculus and that's the sensory homunculus. It is a representation of your entire body in the brain. So if you stimulate this particular area, the brain here, so you will feel the twitches on the face. And if you stimulate this particular area, you will feel the twitches in your thumb. Same thing, if you stimulate this area, you will feel sensory feeling on your face. And if you are doing something on this, you will feel some sensation on your tongue. So that means it is something like a circuit board or a remote board where you can stimulate this part of it, and the fibers or the axons going from this part is supplying that area in the body. So such arrangement is what we call as a somatotrophic arrangement, and it is called as a homunculus. This is your cerebral homunculus, but this is not the question here. So whether we have similar arrangement in your spinal cord is the question, and the answer is yes. So this is what we call somatotrophic arrangement of spinal cord, where you can see here your muscles. If you look at the example of muscles here, so all your proximal muscles are located. They are located close to your central canal, whereas you can see here proximal, and whereas your distal muscles are located close to your anterior horn. So that is, the arrangement is like this. So that means from, if you see from inside to outside, so this is your medial part of your anterior horn, and this is the lateral part. So the lateral part of anterior horn is the medial part of anterior horn. So in the medial part, you will have your proximal muscle group like your shoulder muscles, whereas your lateral part will be having your hand or palm muscle. So this is what is the arrangement what we have, and this is what we call as a somatotrophic arrangement. So this is the region we are seeing example of your cervical. The same thing you will have the arrangement even in case of your lumbosacral arrangement, where lower limb will be compared. Apart from this, you also have a somatotrophic arrangement wherein the medial portion, the medial part of it will be controlling the axial muscle. So these are the muscles which are controlling, or they are present in your axis, the vertebral cord back. And again, the rest of the lateral part of your anterior horn, the posterior part or the dorsal aspect of the anterior horn is responsible for your flexor, and the anterior part is responsible for your extensor. In this also, if you divide this into medial and lateral, so the medial part is responsible for your proximal musculature, that is like shoulder and all. The lateral part is responsible for your distal musculature like your hands or limb in case of your lower limb. So this is what is the arrangement. So how your axial muscles are? Axial muscles are the muscles of your back which are located close to the midline, and the rest of the 2/3 area is for your limbs. And in this also you have anterior and posterior, anterior for your extensor and posterior for your flexor. And there also you got medial and lateral. Medial is for your proximal musculature and lateral is for your distal musculature. So this is the somatotrophic arrangement of your spinal cord, gray matter. Again, this is again same thing, which is I have already shown this one here. The same thing is shown here now. Unlabeled picture is there, you can see. And these are all your red color is all, I said these are all your descending tracks. So descending tracks also, when they are coming down and synapsing over the spinal cord, they are just not coming down and randomly doing it. So your sacral region is located, for example, pyramidal tract. Sacral region is located at the periphery, whereas cervical is located here. So that means to say the nerve fibers which are supplying your foot musculature, they are located at the periphery, whereas the muscle fiber which are nerve fibers which are supplying your hand musculature, they are present close to the midline. So that means they are the fibers which are coming like this. As they go down, they keep moving laterally, and that's how the lower limb is supplied, or the foot is supplied more laterally. So this is a similar arrangement what we have. Even if you look at the pain and temperature spinothalamic tract, here it is quite, again, cervical is inside and the sacral is outside. Again, you don't have to remember this, but you just have to know that there is a arrangement. A somatotraphic arrangement also is present in this. They may not ask this in the exam or anything, but you have to understand that this kind of arrangement exists in the spinal cord. Now, let us look in detail about how the entire gray matter is organized. So here we know that gray matter has got anterior gray column, there's a posterior gray column, and you have even the lateral, which is lateral is also there. So anterior, posterior, and lateral is present again. Now this one, interneurons are actually, we can call this one as a possibly your lateral columns. Now, anterior gray column, we said that is also called the ventral horn. A ventral column or ventral horn, they are filled with the motor neurons. And these motor neurons are called lower motor neuron, LMN, and they are multipolar. When you say multipolar, they'll have multiple polarity, and they have got only one axon and multiple dendrites. So such neurons are what we call multipolar. And why do they call lower motor? Because these are the neurons which are present here, which are under control of other set of neurons which are coming from your brain, or which are controlling from the brain or the higher center. They are called upper motor. So these are your lower motor neuron. They are multipolar, and they are of three types: alpha, beta, and gamma. In this, alpha and gamma are important. This you might have read in your physiology. Your alpha is controlling your extrafusal fiber, and whereas your gamma is controlling your intrafusal, extra and intrafusal fibers of your muscle spindle. So this is the control. So this is responsible for your movement or your activity, whereas this is responsible for your tone. So this is what the different type of neurons you have. So that means first you got your gray column, centrally located butterfly shaped gray matter. In that you got anterior horn. In the anterior horn you got your neurons. In these neurons also they are your multipolar. And these multipolar neurons also, when you look at them functionally, they are of different types because their connections are going to different part of your skeletal system. So that is they are again alpha and gamma. Now you also have the posterior gray column, and in there also you got, again, there are neurons are there, and there are tract cells are there. Tract cells are the cells which actually connects your one tract with the other tract, and these are all the tract cells are coming from your ascending tract. So your ascending tracts goes up, and they are forming here these axons of the tract cells. You also have interneurons. So interneurons are nothing but these are the association neurons which actually will connect. Suppose if you got this one is here, this is, I'll put the interneuron here. So these are your motor neurons here, and these are your sensory neurons here, and these are your interneurons. So thereby whatever information is coming from here, either from the periphery, so this information comes, and via the interneuron it will relate to your motor neuron, and the information goes out. Not only this they will do, they also will communicate the same thing to the opposite side. So that is why these are called as the interneurons or connector neurons. So they are mainly concerned with the reflex activity. So these are all different types of here. So you got your motor neurons, interneurons, and here you can say posterior gray column, you can simply call them as a, for your simple understanding, sensory neurons. There are sensory neurons are present in the posterior column. There are motor neurons are present in your anterior gray column, and there are interneurons are present in your intermediate or lateral column. Now let us talk about your anterior gray column. So in anterior gray column, when we look at this, so these are further arranged now. So anterior gray column also, these are different types. So if you dig further and see under the microscope, they were able to identify that anterior gray column also has a three set of neurons are there. You can see in this picture there are three pink balls which are shown. So one is called as a lateral group, the other one is called as a medial group, and then in the center you got a central group. So there are three set of neurons, neuronal groups have been identified. So these are again alpha, gamma, and beta, but they are again based on how much extent they are present and what is the area of supply they do. Based on that, they are again grouped under lateral, medial, and the central. So if you look at the medial one, if you see, look at the medial group. So medial group, if you look, they extend this one, this medial, you can see this particular thing where I am putting M now. So this one, M1. So this M pink ball, what you are seeing, this is present throughout. You can see here it is present entire extent. So that means it is starting from your C1 until your coccyx one, this one you will find. So that means the anterior horn in the medial part, this medial group is present throughout. That means from the top floor to the basement, this is present entirely. And what it is concerned with, this is concerned with your supplying the muscles of the your trunk, that is your neck and the trunk muscles are supplied, because your neck, your spinal cord or your backbone, neck region, all everything is present from top till bottom. So whatever the muscles are there in the back and the neck are supplied by this. So if any lesion or any injury happen to this particular set of neuron, your truncal musculature will get affected. Then you go to the lateral side now, the extreme lateral. Now there I am putting as a L, sorry. So this L, if you see this one, so this one is the one which is the lateral group is present now. So this lateral group is, now these are lateral motor cell column, so they are not present throughout. So there you can see they extend only in your, you can see this is easy to remember, C4 to L1. So why C4 to L1? This is your nothing but your brachial plexus. So they are present in your C4 to T1. So this is your brachial plexus, and again L2 to S3, that one is your lumbar, lumbosacral or lumbar plexus. So they, what they will do, they supply the muscles of extremity. So needless to say, in this area it will supply your muscles of your upper limb, and in this area it will supply the muscles of lower limb. So that means this lateral column, if you take a section anywhere above C4 and after T2 till L1, you don't find this one. So that means there will be only medial which is present throughout. So this one is selectively present. So just imagine this particular room is not present throughout. It is only present in the cervical region, cervical enlargement and the lumbar enlargement, which is concerned with the supply of your upper limb, lower limb muscles. Now these two, that is what we are calling central. Now the central one is, this is, here is the central. See, now this is again made up of, here it is showing two, they both are central, but is actually it has got one more is there. The function is not known, so it is not shown. So there is a phrenic is there, spinal accessory is there, and one more is there called as a lumbosacral. So there are three nuclei are there within this. Now in the central, if you see, the central is again made up of, or it is depending on where it is extending, it is got three are there in this. So thereby in this also, the phrenic nucleus is only seen from C3 to C5. The root value of phrenic 3, 4, 5 keeps the diaphragm alive. So that means from C3, C4, C5 in the anterior horn, you will find this central nucleus located there, and any damage to this will cause breathing difficulty. And then you got C1 to C5, you got the spinal nucleus. So spinal nucleus is again in this will be present again, the central is present from C1 to C5, and from here all the, suppose if this is your see, all these are coming and they are going up, and they will form your spinal root of accessory nerve. So you know spinal root of accessory nerve arises from your first 5 cervical vertebrae. So they are arising from which part? From the anterior horn. From which part of the anterior horn? Arising from the central group of anterior horn. So that means after C6, you see here, so C3 to C5 you got phrenic nerve, C1 to C5 you got the spinal accessory nerve. After C5 you don't have central group at all. Now there is something I told you as a lumbosacral is there. The name itself says it should be present somewhere in the lumbar and the sacral region. So it is called as a L2 to S3. So this is what is why it is called as a lumbosacral. So this is present in the L2 to S3. So you will find again in L2 to S3 the central nucleus will appear in the transverse section, but when you stimulate this nucleus we don't see anything. So the function is unknown. So unknown function, that is the reason in the table it is not included. Unknown function. Is clear? So this is about your anterior gray column. Now if you go to the posterior gray column, so now posterior gray column is tapering, and it has got again the parts. So the parts of the posterior gray column is, it has got it is very narrow compared to the anterior, and it is tapering. So the parts are, it has got a tip. So this portion is what we call as a tip, and then tip will lead to the next part which we call head. The head will lead to neck, and neck will end in the base. So these are the part. So in this, if I have to say, this one is your, this the whatever is there in top of it. So this one we can call as a tip of it. Sorry. So this portion is called as a tip, which is tip. This is the tip, and then this portion what we have is your head, and this portion what we have is a neck, and this portion what we have, which is just connecting to the rest of the gray matter, is what we call base. So these are the parts of your posterior gray column, and in each part we have a different set of nuclei are present. Now these set of nuclei are colored here in this picture, and you can see these are the names are. So you got your substantia gelatinosa in the tip, and nucleus proprius is present in your head. Clark's column, also called nucleus dorsalis, and so head nucleus is again both nucleus proprius, head and neck, because it is quite a big nucleus, so it occupies head and neck of the posterior column. Whereas your base, the posterior part of the base or the dorsal part of the base is occupied by your Clark's column or the nucleus dorsalis, and the anterior part or the ventral part of the base is occupied by your visceral efferent nucleus. So these are the group of sensory neurons which are present in the posterior horn. So now let us see where all they are extend. So first let us see the substantia gelatinosa. So we know that this is your substantia gelatinosa. Now substantia gelatinosa is present where? Now substantia gelatinosa is present the entire cord. That means again it is like your anterior one, this which I told you, which one was entire, the medial group was entire. So this is something like this. It is present throughout. That means from C1 level all the way till your coccyx level. So it is present throughout substantia gelatinosa. This particular question was asked as a 3-mark in your physiology, substantia gelatinosa of Orlando. Okay. And what is it responsible for? This is a relay nucleus. So these are your cell body. Cell body means it's a nucleus. So it is a relay nucleus for very important pain and temperature pathway. So here they actually modify the transmission of sensory input. So not only they relay this, but sensory input is modified here. In what way? We'll see that in the pathway what we do. But right now when we are talking about our pain and temperature pathway, we definitely will say our first order neuron ends here and the second order neuron start from the substantia gelatinosa in the posterior horn. So this is important. Then next one is your nucleus proprius. If you see the nucleus proprius, this also extend throughout. So this is also throughout. So end to end, this also is extending throughout the length. And this is the part which is again, this contain again association neurons, which are the mixed neurons for the spinal reflexes. So they are responsible for the spinal reflexes, and also they form the second motor neuron for your ventral spinothalamic tract. So there are pain and temperature is one spinothalamic tract, this is another spinothalamic tract. So we have one is lateral, other is ventral. So lateral one is up there, that is your substantia gelatinosa. This one is your ventral, called as a nucleus proprius. So nucleus proprius, again our second order neuron will relay in this part of it, and other than that it is also responsible for your spinal reflexes. Now we got the nucleus, sorry, this was your proprius. Next is your nucleus dorsalis. Now nucleus dorsalis is only present, you can see here, from C8 to L2 or maybe sometime till L3. So that means from C1 to C7 this nucleus is not seen, and after L2 or L3 this nucleus is not seen. And this nucleus is responsible for your relaying your or origin of your axon concerned with the spina cerebellar tract. So posterior spinocerebellar tract is concerned with this. Now it is saying C8 to L2 and L3. So my best guess will be it is something to do with your trunk musculature and your limb balance. So balance of your trunk and the balance of your lower limb is what it is responsible for because of looking at the root value. So C8 to T2. Yeah. Then you got the last one. So that is your visceral efferent. So the name itself says it is something to do with the viscera. Viscera and efferent, that is the sensory information. So this one should be present only in the where the viscera information is coming. It is your thoracolumbar and sacral outflow. So thereby you see T1 to L2 or L3 is your thoracolumbar outflow. S2 to S4 is your sacral part of your craniosacral outflow. So this one is your autonomic outflow, or we can call parasympathetic outflow, and this one is a sympathetic outflow. So that is the reason you find this nucleus is located only in this part of the spinal segment, and this is a relay nucleus for all your visceral afferent. That means during the periods that pain which come from the uterus, so it will be again relaying to this part of the nucleus. Or if you have any stomach upset, or your even the information that the bladder is full, or the the desire to defecate, and all these information is reaching your conscious level. First it has to pass through the spinal center, and which center that is? In the posterior horn, it is this visceral afferent center, right? So this visceral afferent center will not be coming across much, because here we in sensory tract we are talking and this particular information. So thereby among all the four longitudinal posterior gray column, what is important is for us is here substantia gelatinosa, nucleus dorsalis, also called Clark's column, and proprius. Yeah, so this is about your posterior gray column. Now you also have the lateral gray column or lateral horn, and which is again divided into, you can see if this is your lateral, it is divided into a lateral part and the medial part. So this portion which is on the outer side, so this is what we call as the portion which is on the inner side, and the portion is on the outer side. So there is a intermediate, this is also called as a intermediate. So intermediate medial, so intermedio medial and intermedio lateral. So this portion is what we call intermedio lateral nucleus. Here also you can see it is given here, and this part is what we call as a intermedio medial nucleus. The intermedio medial and intermedio lateral, they are again, so intermedio medial nucleus is concerned with, you can see here it is concerned, here it is saying here T1 to L2, that means it is sympathetic. So intermedio medial nucleus, no, T1 to L2 and L3. Intermedio medial should be, this is again wrong, it is given wrong in Vishram Singh. So because if you are saying this is free, which is sympathetic, this is correct, this is sympathetic only. So intermedio medial nucleus is present in S2 to S4, but here it is saying L3. So this is again given the other way around. So this should be down and this should be up, because your medial nucleus is for your, so this is intermedio medial and this one is intermedio lateral. So intermedio lateral nucleus is for your parasympathetic. Okay, so again let us clarify. So intermediate nucleus and intermediate lateral nucleus. So your T1 to L2, that is your sympathetic preganglionic sympathetic nucleus is T1 to L2 segment, the thoracolumbar, and that one is your intermedio lateral. So this one is your lateral one is for your sympathetic nervous system. So which one you will find from T1 to L2 level, whereas your medial nucleus is your parasympathetic. So which one is your S2 to S4. So they receive the source of your preganglionic parasympathetic fiber, whereas your intermediate lateral is your source of your preganglionic sympathetic fiber. So this one is again given wrong in your Vishram Singh, you have to correct it. Okay, and these are concerned with again definitely to both motor and sensory information from all your viscera from your body. Now this is one classification of gray matter what we have seen, and we call this as a columnar classification, because everywhere if you notice we just call this, if you remember, if we just call this one, as you can see, anterior gray column, then posterior gray column, then these are again here we have, these are also lateral gray, these are also lateral gray columns. So this is one columnar classification where your entire concept is based on that entire length or a part of the length of the spinal cord. We have got the gray matter in the form of a columns, like long columns are there. So that is what is a columnar concept. But there is a problem with this concept. But if you see this part of it, and if you notice in this figure that between this there are areas are there where you don't see this area, nothing is given. So that means this area has no function is what it means. So there is a problem with this model, that though whatever the nuclear columns they have shown, they are definitely having a role, and if there is any damage in this area, the particular information which is relaying there gets affected. But the question comes, people started asking, then what happened to the area where you don't have anything? So whether there will not be any neuron present there, or if the neuron present there are not taking part at all. So because of this problem, then came the another scientist by name Rex. So Rex came, and what he did, he studied this concept of gray column again in detail, and he came up with the concept that saying that the entire spinal gray column, the H-shaped gray column, is, instead of dividing them into column, we can actually divide them into lamina. So he has divided the entire gray column, that is the posterior horn, lateral horn and the anterior horn, into lamina instead of a column. So he has given altogether 10 laminas he gave, and these lamina are labeled in the Roman numbers. So Roman numericals are used, and they start from the posterior horn, then they go to lateral horn number wise, and then they go to ventral horn, and finally they will end in the central canal. So that is how the arrangement is there, and they are numerical, and they are even corresponding to the columnar arrangement which has already been proposed previously. So now if you see here in this case, look at the picture here, you can see on the right side and left side, if you compare, this side we got columnar arrangement. So gray columnar arrangement, what we read, is still there, and this one is your laminar arrangement. So it is a laminar versus columnar. Laminar is proposed by Rex and columnar by many people, so that is why no name is given, but laminar is proposed by Rex. So here you can see all the lamina numbers are given, and you can see the lamina 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So till 6, if you see, notice till 6, these lamina, so they are here corresponding to your post. So posterior horn has got 1 to 6 lamina, 1 to 6, yeah, 1 to 6 we can say, and part of 7 also, some part of 7 also, and thereby part of 7 and 8 are your lateral horn, and then we have got only 7 is in the lateral horn, then 8 and 9. If you see here, 8 and 9, they are your anterior horn, and the 10 is around your central canal. So this is what is the arrangement is being given. Now what is the corresponding thing is there? You can see this table. Your lamina 1, which is shown here at the tip, is corresponding to your posto-marginal nucleus, which was again not there in the previous classification, so it has been added. Lamina 2 correspond to your substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. So please compare here this portion with this part of it. And then lamina 3 and 4 correspond to your nucleus proprius. Lamina 4 and 3 and 4, lamina 5 and 6 is for the base of the dorsal column. So the base of the dorsal column, this was again not there, they gave the base. Here you see that empty part which is there here. So possibly this empty portion, this empty part they have given a name. This we call as the base of the dorsal column here. Here you can see there is no nucleus shown in this part of it. No nucleus is shown. That is the base of the dorsal column on that. That is your lamina 5 and 6. So lamina 7, if you see the lamina 7 is quite wide. So entire area is lamina 7. So that is the reason where in the lamina 7, again the medial part, intermedial-medial part and intermediate-lateral part. So there is an intermediate-medial part. In this again we have got, this is your Clark's column, you see. In the medial part you got this one is here, you got the Clark's column. Then there is a intermediate-medial part, so somewhere here we'll have intermediate-medial. Then you have intermediate-lateral. So these are the three. So that intermediate-medial and intermediate-lateral are for your autonomic, and the Clark's column is there at the base of your posterior horn. In addition to this, your lamina 8 and 9. So here you can see 9 is present all along, and 8 is present behind this. So this is for your anterior gray column. So all your medial, lateral and the central gray column nuclear concept what we gave, they are accommodated in your lamina 8 and 9. Whereas lamina 10 is the one which was not seen in the columnar concept, but in laminar concept it has been given as a around the central canal of the spinal cord, that is your gray commissure, and it is also called as a substantia gelatinosa centralis. So that is the two areas what we have in front and back of your central canal. So this is your Rex lamina. So here again you can see the comparison of a nuclear concept, gray columnar nuclear concept with the laminar concept. Now what is the use of this lamina? So what exactly, there is not much use as far as the clinical concept is concerned, but your lamina, the concept of lamina is useful in the experiments. So when they are doing some experimental studies, what they can do is they can damage a particular lamin in the spinal cord by giving an electric shock and see which neurons are died and which neurons are responsible for what function. So thereby this concept of laminae, rex laminae, is useful only in experimental work. That is research, experimental and research work, and not the clinical work. Because by this it is providing our information. So it provides the information of any degeneration. Suppose if there is any terminal nerve fiber, if the last terminal nerve fiber is degenerated or cut off, or we section it, terminal nerve fiber is degenerated or section means cut off, there is degenerated by any natural cause or it is cut because of an injury or experiment, so then whether it lead to, so this after section of this, it lead to what exactly? Loss of function, so that can be known. So but clinically it is very difficult to find out, so thereby it doesn't have any clinical significance. So that's about your rex laminae, and this finishes your entire gray column, and the next is your white matter. So I will make another session for the white matter, so I'll see you in the white matter of spinal cord. There we will talk about the tracks, ascending tract.